watching Shalom TV, celebrating Jewish culture. Funding for Shalom TV has been provided by the following. And by viewers like you.
The Rotem Conversion Bill was passed by the Knesset's Constitution, Law, and Justice Committee on July 11th and created a firestorm in response. One of the American Jews who's concerned about the implications of the bill is Jerry Silverman, President and CEO of the Jewish Federations of North America, which means that Jerry is now the man who heads the entire Jewish Federation movement in North America and represents the concerns and interests of millions of American Jews. Here is my conversation concerning the Rotem Conversion Bill with Jerry Silverman. And we're most pleased to have on our phones from Israel right now the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Jewish Federations of North America, Jerry Silverman. Jerry, thank you so much for joining us.
It is my pleasure, Mark, to join you from the Holy Land.
Very nice. So, Jerry, in your own words, what prompted you to rush to Israel to speak to Israeli leaders about the Rotem Conversion Bill?
Well, if you don't mind a slight correction to the story.
Please.
Two things. Number one is when the bill came out a few months ago, Kathy Manning, the chair of the board of the Jewish Federations of North America, and I immediately penned a letter to the Prime Minister expressing our concern about the bill and its effect on diaspora Jewry. And we're extremely concerned at that point. The Prime Minister responded a few weeks later by sharing his concern and that he would set up a roundtable for discussion, which was to be led by Natan Sharansky. Natan Sharansky, at the Board of Governors of the Jewish Agency for Israel, had a meeting with all constituencies, which included 4 cabinet ministers, Minister Neman, Minister Bougie Herzog, Minister Edelstein, and Minister Begin, where we had a preliminary dialogue. And Natan his plan was then to begin to bring that dialogue and discuss a project with David Rotem. About 10 days ago, Natan got word on a Sunday that rather than having a discussion, David Rotem planned to bring the bill to his committee the very next morning. I was in Budapest for 4 or 5 days with a Jewish Federation mission with campaign chairs and directors that landed by coincidence in Israel that Sunday. Mm-hmm. And as I landed in Israel, was immediately appraised of the situation and left the mission that Sunday evening to join Natan at the committee meeting the following Monday morning. And although my plans were to stay in Israel one day, I'm now on day 11 in Israel. And the purpose of really staying, and after sitting in the committee meeting and seeing the bill really be rushed through, and also realize that the bill had brand new language that we hadn't seen before, it was clear to us that this was going to be incredibly divisive for diaspora Jews, and decided that in my role and in responsibilities that I felt that I needed to stay and work with Natan and take a leadership role in trying to get this bill to be stayed and not be brought to the Knesset floor, so that we could really develop what the Prime Minister had envisioned was a roundtable discussion. Mm-hmm. So that's why I've stayed, and although I didn't jump on a plane, it was just one of those coincidences of me landing at the same time this broke out.
David Rotem visited America. He went from American Jewish leader to American Jewish leader. He met with Julie Schoenfeld, members of the Reform movement, and he promised while he was in America he would not promote his bill if American Jewish leaders were uncomfortable with it.
The challenge is that in the whole process of this, there was very specific negotiations going on between David Rotem and the Shas party, and they added two things into the bill. One is they gave the chief rabbinate responsibility for all conversions.
How is that different than one exists today?
Well, the chief rabbinate does not have legal responsibility by law of all conversions. In fact, there were two Supreme Court cases in the early 2000s that declared very clearly that by law the chief rabbinate does not have full responsibility. By putting this in the legislature, there's a couple of things that could happen. Number one, it creates a very monopolistic approach. As we've seen over time, that there's been certain conversions that have been discounted and annulled by the chief rabbinate, and so by putting this in law, it could potentially overturn past court decisions, and it would give somewhat of a monopoly on the chief rabbinate. You know, the purpose of the original bill was to ease conversion for specifically the Russian-speaking people who came in Operation Exodus and beyond, because there's tens of thousands of people who they were hoping would convert to Judaism officially.
Correct.
And their purpose was to create the ease through bringing conversions out to the municipalities, mm-hmm. where they felt that there would be a little bit more leniency, there would be a little bit more comfortability based on relationships, and they would be able to market to people that and encourage people to go through the conversion process. But by putting the chief rabbinate in full responsibility, really puts into question, from a sense of precedent, some significant issues around that. The second piece to the puzzle that was literally put in a week before the bill was taken to committee was the concept of Kabbalat Mitzvot Lahalacha, and basically saying anyone who converts has to be very clear that they will commit to live an Orthodox life, mm-hmm. and to declare that very publicly. And again, that's the first time in the legislature and in law the word halacha is being brought.
In terms of Israeli law.
In terms of Israeli law.
Yeah. But I don't, Jerry, am I wrong? It doesn't change anything practically. In other words, at the moment, if someone wishes to convert inside the state of Israel,
right,
they must commit to halacha.
Right. It doesn't, except once you put it into law, you are setting you're setting up a slippery slope.
Correct.
And you're setting a precedent. And, from a point of the precedent itself and a point of, looking at how we in the diaspora are putting such emphasis on trying to encourage young people to go to Israel, connect to Israel, understand that part of your Jewish identity has Israel at the core. This somewhat creates almost such a strong message of a society in a Jewish state that truly isn't open for all Jews. It's really open for a certain stream of Jews. And so, what is really clear from 1948 and beyond is that the Jewish state is for all of the Jewish people. And so what we are really interested in and what we believe is before precedents are set and before these issues are dealt with in dealing with significant issues about Judaism, we feel that there should be a table where those things can be discussed and where constituencies and all parties from the diaspora and from Israel can really have a place to share their views and hopefully come to compromise. Mm-hmm. Remember, the original intent of the bill is to open up the concept of conversion. Mm-hmm. In analysis by various rabbis, Orthodox rabbis, who we've talked to, this is not going to open up the doors of conversion. Many forecasts say that you may get an additional 50 to 100 conversions more a year.
Why wouldn't it make it easier for people to convert? But the one thing I did not think was an issue was that Rotem's goal of making it more possible, easier for people to find the rabbi. And also, my understanding, Jerry, was there was a real logjam here, and that if you opened up the conversion process to local rabbis in cities and towns throughout the state of Israel, that you simply gave more people greater access to the conversion process. I don't understand why that would not be true if the bill were passed.
Well, it's all about the question of, and you have to look at how things, are. You have to look at the different possibilities as to, the chief rabbinate still has full responsibility for the conversions. There's so many pieces of the puzzle that aren't spelled out.
I don't understand how that. Wait, you may say that I've got it totally wrong. My understanding is that conversion as it exists now, before the Rotem Bill, gives the Orthodox establishment in Israel control over family law, marriage, divorce, conversion, and burial. And that the state of Israel basically made a deal with Shas and the Orthodox establishment. We're talking, by the way, the ultra-Orthodox establishment. That in terms of the state of Israel's law of return, that would be something that was maintained by the Jewish state, and that, as you articulated beautifully, it reflected the sense of Klal Yisrael. Any Jew was eligible to become an Israeli citizen under the law of return, even someone who converted to Judaism in America, outside of Israel, by a non-Orthodox rabbi. I say out of Israel, Jerry, because in Israel you can only be converted by an Orthodox rabbi. But outside of Israel, if a conservative rabbi or a Reform rabbi converts someone to Judaism, under the law of return as it stands today, they are eligible to return to Israel, to come home and be a member of the Jewish state. And that sense of Klal Yisrael is what you talked about a moment ago. At the very same time, before the Rotem Bill, the state of Israel made a deal with the ultra-Orthodox party and the ultra-Orthodox establishment that when it came time for marriage, divorce, conversion, and burial that would be, at the moment, under the auspices of the Orthodox establishment. And that is why no Israeli can marry except by an Orthodox rabbi in Israel. And if they want anything other than an Orthodox rabbi to marry them, they either go to a foreign country and return married, or they go to what's the equivalent of town hall. An Orthodox rabbi does the formal ceremony, and then they come home to Netanya, to Ashkelon, to Jerusalem, wherever they want to be, and they have their symbolic ceremony with any rabbi they want. But the reality of life in Israel, Jerry, is that if you want to be married, or you want to convert, or you want to be buried, it's under the auspices of the Orthodox establishment. And one of the things that bothers me is that I am troubled by what has happened because of the Rotem Conversion Bill for exactly the reason you stated. It opens a slippery slope to embolden Orthodox establishment of Israel to try to extend its power beyond family law and to the law of return. But I don't believe that the Rotem Conversion Bill does that at the moment. It only is a symbolic statement which troubles American non-Orthodox leaders, because any attempt to further entrench ultra-Orthodox power in Israel delivers a blow to the notion of Jewish pluralism, which American Jews are totally comfortable with, but which does not exist at the moment in the state of Israel. And so there's this constant battle going on between American Jewish leadership and the establishment of Israel in an attempt to move Israel towards Jewish pluralism. But my understanding, and now I'll let you correct me if I'm wrong, is that at the moment, Jewish pluralism does not exist anyway in the state of Israel. And while the Rotem Bill does again serve as a symbolic gesture, there's nothing to it that changes life on the ground for any Israeli or any prospective convert here in America.
Well, I think two things. I think number one is the proposed legislation really tampers with the delicate religious status quo in Israel. And I would say that even though ostensibly the Orthodox chief rabbinate gains power, this could boomerang. And as it boomerangs, it will disenfranchise the overwhelming majority of North American Jewry.
How?
By giving all the power to the Orthodox.
But how does it? I'm a non-Orthodox Jew, Jerry, and you are. How does it
No, that's not true.
You're an Orthodox Jew.
I'm a Jew.
But
I don't class.
Okay, but are you?
I love being Jewish. How's that?
Okay,
I'm Shabbat observant.
Okay.
But
are you worried that you will be disenfranchised?
I worry that this is already created a rift. That it is setting a precedent in law, and it concretizes the procedures that are in operation today. And by anchoring these in law, it really represents a challenge to any type of concept of pluralism in Israel. But so we're going to concretize something that is going to be a slippery slope that could create, forms of discrimination and create a real rift in Jewry worldwide. This is again, one thing one thing that we've heard through this process is it's coming out of North America, it's coming out of Australia. You're hearing comments from Europe, you're hearing comments from Latin America, etc. It's a slippery slope.
Yes.
And because it's a political tool, and it's become a political tool, it raises so many questions.
Okay, my last question for you then is, I want, from your sense, the practical bottom line. My sense is that Israel, that the Knesset as a whole, even if there's a problem with a coalition government that needs the Shas party in their coalition, that there's no way in the world the state of Israel, through the Israeli Knesset, would ever pass a law that would create this kind of breach with the rest of world Jewry, and that people like you, Natan Sharansky, who called this a betrayal of world Jewry, that people such as you, that your voices, and I'm not even talking about the voices of those who lead the conservative and reform movement, but those who represent, in essence, the larger Jewish community as a whole, that when people like you and Sharansky speak out, and you have the ear of everyone, that there is not a way in the world that in the end the Knesset would ever pass such a bill. Do you feel I am being romantically naive, or do you agree with me?
I think that I would split in the middle. And I would share with you this, that at the end of the day, if you look at what the Prime Minister said a few weeks ago, and then he, on Sunday, at his cabinet meeting, his full cabinet meeting, came out publicly and said, I am against this bill. I am for the unity of the Jewish people. This bill cannot pass in this form because it will create a disastrous rift in our relationship with the concept of the unity of the Jewish people. So, from my point of view, the Prime Minister showed incredible leadership by being very consistent in his position. And I think that from a point of Natan Sharansky or the Jewish federations or our religious movements across the board, the key at the end of the day is the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister made a very strong statement. And I believe that he's committed, to this concept of having a table of dialogue, which we welcome. And we're very hopeful that that table will be joined by David Rotem and others that can hopefully bring this to a great place that will achieve the goals that it originally set out to. And as a secondary note, the president of Israel, Shimon Peres, also came out with a very public statement about the divisiveness of this bill and how important it is as a Jewish people, especially today, when there are forces out there trying to delegitimize Israel, that this is not a time for us to be in a place where we're not unified. It's a time for us to work together on issues and to solve our issues and really to create a concept of Klal Yisrael, and I'm confident we'll get there.
I am too. I assume, and again, I may be romantic here, I assume that although there are those within the Shas party and those who are part of the ultra-Orthodox establishment of Israel who believe that their direction is the right direction, that the overwhelming number of Knesset people you speak to and Israeli leaders you speak to are sympathetic to your position. Am I wrong?
Well, it's very clear that the Meretz Party, the Labor Party, the Kadima Party believe very, very strongly, as does many, and most of the Likud Party. Feel that this bill is one that's very difficult and one that's divisive, and the Prime Minister having said what he said about this, I feel confident that he will create the type of situation where we will be able to get the right people at the table to work out the differences so that we really can achieve the goals and the wonderful goals that and the problems that David Rotem really set out to solve.
Jerry Silverman, we are so lucky to have you now as president and Chief Executive Officer of the Jewish Federations of North America. You are doing extraordinary work. I wish you now in this specific endeavor, kol tuv v'hatzlacha, and I also hope you get some sleep every now and then, and that in the end you will come back with a real sense of accomplishment and a sense of healing rather than a sense of divisiveness. And I am very appreciative that you give me so much time, Jerry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. And I think we're going to move to a very, very positive place.
I do. You be well. We'll talk again soon.
Bye.
Thanks. And those are the thoughts of the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Jewish Federations of North America, Jerry Silverman. And as you hear, he is very optimistic that the Rotem Conversion Bill will not pass, certainly not in its present form. Of course, I welcome any of your thoughts or comments. Please be in touch with me by email or by mail this week. I look forward to hearing from you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who can send a tax-deductible contribution of $36 or more to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media to help support our programming. Tax-deductible checks may be made out to GEM and mailed to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. Please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD, and we thank you for your kind support.